Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Seeing Ability Podcast. We're having a conversation about the world of individuals with disabilities. And that means we're going to be talking sometimes to adults who grew up as that kid with a difference, or parents who are raising kids, or a lot of people that support them. So some of our episodes are going to be folks in education or nonprofits or healthcare supporting this community. First of all, I know you're busy and you've got a lot of different choices when it comes to your free time. So thanks for tuning into the podcast. I think you're going to enjoy it today because we've got a mom with us. Lots of you out there are parents raising kids with differences. First of all, Natalie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I am happy to be here.
Yeah, I know as we were talking about different topics we might cover, we've got a lot. So I'm going to
Hmm.
jump into that in a minute. But first, we
Okay,
always like to get to know you just on a personal level. So we're going to do the Fast Four. That's brought to
sure.
us by my friends at Reliable Tech Help. So if you have tech needs, you can reach out to them at 502 797 7399. Number one, Natalie, what's your favorite food?
I mean, that's a hard one because I love to cook and I love to eat. Probably lobster. We did a big
Lobster.
lobster boil this weekend. It was delicious.
Okay, if we got your playlist, what kind of music would we find on it?
It's very eclectic. I have a thing for 70s and 80s disco. I love the Bee Gees and Rod Stewart. So,
There you go.
and some current country. I'm all about this new Julia Cole song called Day Late and Buck Short. So
Okay, I love
it's
it.
all across the board.
What are you enjoying right now in terms of it could be a streaming show, a movie you love, or a book you're reading?
So I am reading no surprise, the Ina Garden biography, and I love it. And there's a new JFK biography JFK Jr. biography that I've just
Oh,
started. I'm totally fascinated with his story.
okay, I love it. And then what about a destination, maybe a bucket list place that you'd love to go, but you haven't been yet?
Oh, I want to go to Italy. That's
Okay,
definitely
Italy.
on my list. Yeah.
I don't think you're alone there. I think I see a lot, I hear a lot of people nodding their heads. I could just imagine as we're doing
Hmm.
that. Well, first of all, being a parent in this world, tell us a little bit about your backstory. Just kind of introduce who you are, your daughter Laurel, and kind of how you came into the world of being on a path that most people didn't expect, the whole special needs parenting path.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, I love to share my story. I grew up in a small town in Middle Tennessee and met my husband, who was Greek. So that was very exotic. Me and a Greek. And, I got married. My first marriage, I was 30. He was 41. And he had this lovely 10-year-old daughter, Laurel, who, not having children of my own, I loved and adored her, but she was special needs. And
Mm,
so, um, she'll always be like a 5 or 6 year old and will need help, not able to live independently.
yeah.
So here I am getting married at 30 and becoming a mom, which I was so excited because I always wanted kids. But then your child is not like the other kids at school. And
Yeah. So I talked to a lot of parents where on this show even where it's like the acceptance piece of the journey is
Mhm.
like you're having a child, you're having a baby, and then something complication comes and it kind of life throws you a curveball. You're a different entry point into that, but still a curveball, right? A new parent, a new mom, but a kid with differences. Tell us what that was like for you to work through those emotions and then coming out of it. What did you learn and what advice do you give to other parents, even parents entering blended families like that?
it was challenging because here we are newlyweds. We've been married about 2 months and Laurel came to live with us,
Mm,
which at first I had some, I won't say hesitations, but because I loved her, but you think you have this life and you're going to be newlyweds for a while, and then all of a sudden there's this child thrown in. And for her, it was the very best thing to have two parents, and her mom's fantastic and could not have been this journey without her. But it was hard because we didn't always get to go do the regular stuff that
mm.
you think you get to do. But she loved going to the zoo and all those kid things and to get manicures. And so we kind of just worked our way into it. But our situation was a little challenging because um, Laurel, I think, should be diagnosed today. She would absolutely be on the autism scale, very severely
Hmm.
autistic. And so she would have to always be someone with someone that she was familiar with. So I remember the first time that I took her by myself, we would just do little like short trips. We'll go to Target or we'll go to the grocery store, and if she doesn't have a meltdown and everything's good,
Hmm.
it's a good day. So it's little gradual steps. And that was hard for me because I wanted to go do all the things. I wanted to be the
Right.
mom and go to the zoo and go get manicures and go swimming. And that was hard because it had to be little baby steps.
And
And
you kind of had to adjust your picture of what parenting was going to be like.
I really did. And it was challenging because it's not at all what you think parenting is going to be, and even the school issues. And so thankful we have fantastic schools and teachers and after school programs. And I don't know what we would have done without them, but it was adjusting to a school life that I wasn't familiar with. It wasn't
Right.
your normal schools, IEPs. And I remember one day Laurel got suspended, and I'm like, our child is suspended from school. What happened?
Right.
But they act out, and I was actually then very proud because come to find out, a little boy, he pulled sitting behind her, pulled her hair. We should turn around and hit him. And I'm like, well, good for you for standing up for yourself. But she didn't realize in her brain that hitting the other kid wasn't wrong, wasn't right.
Yeah. Did you ever have a time where you had to kind of wrestle with the idea that like the journey is different than what you might have thought? And did you feel guilty for like thinking it was different? Like that sometimes people, part of the acceptance is like you have these disappointments, but then you feel bad for having them.
I did in the beginning. I really did. I felt a little guilty, but then I just decided to embrace it. I was like, you know what? God has
Mm,
given me this opportunity and this chance for this child who needs me. And so I just changed my mind and my thought pattern to it was an opportunity to make her life better and give her
mm,
some sense of normalcy and having a normal life, because I think luckily in her mind she didn't realize she was different than other kids at school, and she wanted to do everything they did.
right. Right. So that, yeah, that change. So it sounds like when you came through it, it's when you kind of had an adjustment of what your expectations were.
I really did. And I think you have to. I think that's hard for parents because I know there is always that sadness. You're like, my child's not
Mm,
normal. What did I do to deserve this? And
yeah.
my sweet husband, he passed away 7 years ago, her dad. But, he would talk a lot about, I don't understand. He has health issues, and he would be, I don't understand. I don't understand why I am so sick and why I'm the only one that had a child that isn't normal. And I think he carried
Mm,
a lot of weight and guilt with
yeah.
him that, why? And we just had to work really hard on changing our thought patterns that, we have this opportunity to love this child and give her as much of a normal life as possible.
Yeah, there's such a series of steps because I think the first thing is all those emotions are really real. Even to have a
Mhm.
sense of a mourning of the life you thought you were going to have. And it's not bad to think that. So allowing yourself the grace and the space to have those emotions. But then obviously we don't want to stay in those emotions. We want to get on the other side of like, this is our life now. So I guess
Mhm.
thinking about that whole journey of like feeling those emotions and learning to accept a new path, what would be your advice for parents, whether they're like you with a coming into a marriage where somebody's already got a kid like that, or even a birth parent that's like, okay, we've got a diagnosis now, she's never going to grow up to do XYZ. What's your advice for parents on acceptance?
Yeah, I think my advice is just to embrace it, and you really have to work hard. I mean, it's hard to work, but you've got to just think about, I have a child that I have an opportunity to make their life better. They're so dependent on me, but I've been given this child to make their life better for
Mm.
whatever reason. And some of the things I learned to embrace were that Laurel's the most loving, sweetest child, and she could have not loved me and hated me just because I was her stepmom and not her natural mom.
Ah,
And she loved me. And so being thankful for opportunities like that, that she will never know the anger or the hurt. And I think that's something
yeah,
that's real with teenagers, is that,
right.
she always loved her parents. She loved me. And
Yeah.
being thankful for that sweet soul and that sweet child that you have.
It's an amazing point that, yeah, that's not always a part of the stepmother journey, right? That
Right.
deep love for the parent, and that idea of like trying to maybe let go of what's not there and really appreciate what is there.
It is, and you have to look really hard for those opportunities. But
Yeah.
you
So
know,
once you get you're living with this new marriage, you've got a
mhm,
child who has extra needs. Part of what any parent has is that they kind of refer to it as building your community, building your village.
mhm.
What was that like for you guys? What role, what part of your story was the village building?
Yeah, the village building was very challenging because we'd also just moved to a new city and 10 hours from each of our families. And we knew,
Okay, so not that natural network of relatives and
mm-mm,
everybody nearby.
no, not at all. And we knew no one in this city. We moved there for Nick's job except Laurel's birth mother, who had been
Okay.
Nick's ex-wife. So
Yeah.
we were forced very quickly to create a good bond with her, and she and I are still close. We had to be.
Yeah.
And also to learn to find others. And we had some great neighbors who
Hmm.
would jump in, and Laurel would quickly attach herself to people. So we had a neighbor that would come and take her to the zoo, and great teachers and teachers' aides who during the summer would help with caring for her or being her nanny because we still had to work, but yet we had a child we couldn't drop off at a daycare, or we couldn't call the next door 13-year-old to babysit. She needed a higher level
Yeah.
of care. And then if she had what we call a meltdown, the kicking, screaming, crying, hitting your head
Sure.
against the wall, there was somebody that was able to help her through that. And
Mm.
so we very quickly created a village and a community of people. And for me, it was reassuring that, they didn't judge us. They didn't think that we were giving us people, and this breaks my heart. People see somebody with a child that's different and they're afraid
Yeah.
or they don't want to get involved. And I feel very lucky that the people in our community and our village came to us and loved on us and adored Laurel and would give up their time or include her with things that their kids were doing.
Yeah. So did you connect to other parents that had kids with challenges as well? Was that part of your community?
So we did, that was more difficult because most of the parents, they didn't have parent groups
Right.
like they do now. And there wasn't, when we started this journey in 1999, there was not social media and the meetups.
Right.
So most of the other parents we knew were through school, and a lot of the kids that she went to school with, they had more severe physical problems. And
Right.
kudos to those parents because it takes every single fiber of your being when your kid is in a wheelchair every day just to get them to
Sure.
school. I don't know, and so I don't think that they had the groups and communities, or they did. We didn't know about them. So it was more our neighbors, my coworkers. A lot of people I worked with loved Laurel and would babysit and help us out.
Yeah.
And then her mom, was really our community.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm sure in some ways, helping you guys and stepping up to be a part of your community probably changed some of the people because they hadn't been around a kid who was different prior to that.
Oh, it did. It absolutely did. And some of her little neighbor friends, they were all younger than her. They would be first, second graders, and she was fifth, sixth grader, but they would include her riding their bikes and doing playing outside. And because they did the activities, still coloring books, and they did the activities that she wanted to do, where the kids her age were doing older kid things like soccer and stuff she couldn't do. And so I think it was a learning point for them too, that these kids unconditionally would invite her over to play. Or if they were out playing, they're, Laurel, let's go ride our bikes. And that made me really happy that they weren't afraid of her. They didn't see her as being different.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You had a pretty good experience, like you said, of when you take a kid out into the world who shows up differently, you get a variety of different reactions.
Mhm.
And sometimes That's an opportunity to like build bridges with people and help them have better understanding of people with differences. Sometimes it's frustrating and it almost makes you mad, the way people act.
Yes.
What was that journey like for you, taking her, new mom, kid who's different, you take her to Target, maybe like you said, if she was in a wheelchair it'd be one thing, but she has a disability that shows up more behaviorally, and people might think, oh, what's wrong with that mother? That kid's acting out, that judgment kind of thing. Um, did you have any experiences in that, and did you have an evolution of like how you reacted to those situations that you were able to learn?
I absolutely did. And it was definitely an evolution because at first I didn't know how to act and what to do because I kept thinking to look at her she looks normal, but when you speak with her, there's something just not right because she would ask you your name. Jim, what's your name? You say, Jim, what's your, like a million times.
Yeah.
But I feel like people were so loving and accepting. Like we would go to the nail salon and they were so kind and gracious and they would take her and do her nails just like anybody else. And
Mm,
the thing I remember, there's a local grocery store where a lot of the kids in her school worked. And I didn't know this until later, but we would go in and all of the older kids would know her name. They'd be like, hey, Laurel, hi, Laurel. And I was like, Laurel, I said, Laurel, how do you know them? She's like, well, they're in my class. But what I didn't realize was that at her school, the Honor Society and some of the older kids would go and volunteer in the special needs classroom.
got it.
And I thought I was going to cry the first time we're out, and they were so nice to her. Like in the grocery store, they just would come up and talk to her and let's take your mom's groceries out. And to see them being so kind and so loving instead of acting like they didn't know her or acting
Yeah.
like she was, just somebody else at school. And I still almost cry when I talk about it. And to
Hmm.
me,
Yeah.
it was a quick acceptance, even though, I might have been uncomfortable or not sure to see the other
Sure.
people around us accept her and their kindness was,
So it sounds like, that idea that you might be parent might be nervous or kind of wonder how are people going to react? Are they going to be mean to her? Things like that is so natural. But it sounds like from hearing you talk, it was actually the opposite, that Laurel was kind of a magnet to bring out the best in people.
just has such a sweet soul. And I was absolutely worried about how people would react, and especially first trying to, handle her by myself. And I don't mean handle in a bad way, but if we ran into a situation where she was upset, how am I going to get her back in the car
Yeah.
and do things? And she just drew people to her, and I was surprised because especially I was around her going to high school and with the other kids be mean and very fearful of that. And we had the best experience. Just everybody embraced her and loved on her. And there were still hard days. It wasn't all lovely and roses. There were
Right.
hard days, but overall, it was. Our village was fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. One of the issues that a lot of parents struggle with when they have a kid who's different, and especially you mentioned Laurel
Mhm.
is more involved, probably not a person who's going to ever live independently on her own, is like, how do you set the right bar of expectations? You've got that kind of spectrum between the helicopter parent that kind of hovers over and never lets
Mhm.
the kid try anything because they don't, they're understandably worried that they're going to fall or they're going to have hardship. And then you've got the parent that's like, toss them in the deep end, they'll figure it out, kind of thing. And somewhere
Yeah.
in between, there's no judgment here. How were you in that area? Where were you on the spectrum? And what did you learn as far as setting that bar for her and letting her grow? And then maybe, stepping in or stepping back.
Yeah, you just have to set the bar differently. And for us, milestones were that she would write her name, just be
Mm-hmm.
able to write her name. Or if the neighbors asked her to go to the zoo with them or to go to church with them, and she could do that outing and everybody have a good time. And so that was hard to kind of let her go independently
Yeah.
on an afternoon with the neighbors because you don't know how it's going to go. Are they going to call us in 10 minutes to come get her? And she would come home and be so happy. And it was setting the bar just that she has to do things on her own and you can't worry about the outcomes. So, okay, yeah, she goes to vacation Bible school, she goes to church with the neighbors, and she stays for an hour and then they call and come get us. I mean, that was huge. And you just got to set the bar with what you think she can do.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
uh, I think one thing too, instead of the bar was her senior year in high school, we wanted her to have the regular experiences, go to prom and do all the senior things. And we made it fun. I took her dress shopping. We got her dress. She's talked about how her dress was sparkly, and her dad was her date at prom. And
Oh,
um,
wow.
it was, and I went too. So we had a little family prom date. And even her teachers made it special. Like they had a table with all of their students and their kids. And so it was nice to see that, yeah, maybe, the bar's not said here that she's going to college, but yet she's
Right.
experienced all the same things in her class are for
Mm,
graduation
yeah, I love
in
that.
her next
Well,
life.
I think Natalie is how, I mean, Laurel is how old today?
She'll be 30, she's 36, she'll be 37 on Friday. So I think this is an appropriate time to celebrate
Yeah.
her and her birthday. And she's doing fantastic.
So
She's doing great.
you've had the perspective of, meeting her when she was a 10-year-old, but and sort of helping raise a child who has
Mhm.
differences. But then you've also had the experience of being around and supporting an adult with differences. Somebody once they get
Yeah.
out of that school age. What was that like as far as the resources, the village? How did things change in the adult years, kind of from what, 20 to 36? And then maybe what are your takeaways? What are some of your advice for parents in that chapter of life?
Yeah, that's really hard. And that's probably where setting the bar and challenges and the village were the most important because she adored school. And
Mm,
so after high school, what do you do? Because
right,
Laurel's very smart, but she has to be occupied. She's got to always have something, be on the computer, have activities. And we had that routine with school, and then school was over and it's nothing.
right.
And we did some of the adult daycare programs and those, and they just weren't enough. And luckily, some of her high school counselors we stayed in touch with, and they would go back and they recommended a living facility. And I was the one that really hesitated and didn't want her to go because I thought, is she going to be
Okay.
safe? Is she going to be happy? It's 2 hours away from us. And what if she has a problem and we can't get to her? And I was kind of
It
the one that was
wasn't
like,
the birth parents, it was the stepmom that was
right, I was a
reluctant.
stepmom that I was like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want her to go. I want to hold on to her. And um, seeing her go, and it was so hard the first couple of weeks, every day, we're okay, nobody's called, we've checked on her, everything's good. But then seeing her make new friends and live her life, and where she is now, they have work programs and they do Special Olympics and they go to the movies. She has her own little life to as
Mm,
much of an extent as she can have her life. And we call it college, and she has a little room we decorate every year. Um, but that became really important when her dad died in 2018.
right.
Um, Laurel was 30 and she adored her dad and he adored her. And I remember one of the counselors telling us, because I knew Nick had health issues, and they said, the worst thing that happens to a child is they've lived with these parents their entire life, and now the parent's gone, and they're thrust into having to be on their own or into a new living situation.
Mm,
And I didn't fully understand it until Nick died, and it was just like, thank goodness she has her own life, because the worst thing would have been her being home every day and used to her dad coming home after work and then he's not there. He's gone and he's not
right.
coming back. And
My
that would have
goodness.
been devastating to her. But
Yeah. That
she
that's really that's powerful. But yeah, that you didn't know that that was going to be a benefit from that, but the way it played out, what a blessing.
It absolutely was, Jim. And I'm so thankful that we made that decision. And that was probably the most difficult decision and time period in this whole experience. But she's doing great now. She loves where she lives. They adore her. and she has her own little life, and it would have been very, very hard for her, even
Right.
if it was still me. It would have been every day though. Where's dad? When's dad coming home? Where's dad? And now I'll go visit and she'll be, where's dad? When's dad coming to see me? And I'll say, dad's in heaven with Papu. And she's like, okay, and goes about whatever she's doing.
There it is, Papu, that Greek grandfather
Yeah,
word. I
the
love it. I
great,
love it. So
the great grandfather.
I want to ask you a question, but first we're going to take a short break. When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 14 years of experience to help his clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so that you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502 803 5075. And now back to the show. So that chapter where you said you wanted to hold her close, but you had to learn to force yourself to kind of let her go. I guess what advice would you have for parents as their kids are entering that adult chapter and they may be at that fork in the road of like, do they stay with us? Do they find a different living setting? What's your advice there?
My advice is to let him go, as hard as it is to say.
Mm,
It's like any child when they turn 18 and go to college, you've got to kind of let them spread their wings, as hard as it is. And it's a different situation, but um, it's so much better for her to have her own life, to what extent it can be her own life. And because it is hard, I talk to people all the time. They're like, I don't know what to do. My parents need help now. I have the sibling that's always lived with my parents. They've always taken care of him, and now they can't take care of themselves. I have to work. What am I going to do? And it's hard. And those are those things you don't think about, 20 years ago when they graduate from high school. And
mm,
because we're going to keep them home, we're going to do stuff at home, it's going to be fine. But then 20, 30 years down the road, when those parents aren't able to take care of them,
right.
it's harder for them to go make that change because now you rock their world and the parents' world.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I wish we could have enough time in our podcast to talk for 2 hours. I feel like there's a lot more subjects we could get to, but
Yeah.
my audience is pretty busy, so we try to keep these tight. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with kind of an overarching question that I ask most guests, and
Sure.
that's like, well, let's imagine we're bringing you in as a guest speaker. Maybe it's a local children's hospital, and they've got parents who have kids maybe under 6 years old, and they've got a variety of diagnoses, but the commonality is they're all on this different path. And you're the speaker giving advice for the parents on the road ahead. We can have you get a 30-minute speech, but if you were going to give like 3 to 4 like overall keys to success, having what did they say? Been there, done that, got the T-shirt yourself.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to these young parents?
To embrace the journey. And it's so hard because there's so many hard days.
Mm,
But to be thankful you've been given this opportunity and to learn from it. And there's going to be another parent down the road that you're going to share your story with and help, or you're going to share your advice with and help. And even the hard days, embrace those days and just look at it as an opportunity to help improve their lives and be there for your kids. Love them hard. Love them. They need some extra love, and the parents need extra love because it's very stressful in a relationship in families, and be there and love them hard and love them some extra because sometimes it's not pretty and it's hard, and you've got to look into yourself and love a little harder. And it's harder to find that love sometimes.
yeah,
And
I love
yeah,
that.
but celebrate the milestones. I think it's like you can't compare your kid to
Mm,
another kid at all
sure.
with the diagnosis or without, and you've got to set your own milestones and you got to set your own milestones. Like Laurel being able to write her name at 17, that was huge.
Right.
And, figure out what your milestones and bars are and don't hold them to somebody else's expectation.
Yeah, I love that. That's
So,
probably true for all of us, right?
right.
Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say, right?
So true. Yeah, so true. And you just have to, yeah, there's disappointment. There's a lot of disappointment, but just look at it as an opportunity that you've been given this special child and
Yeah.
you have an opportunity to love them.
Well, Natalie, I'm so thankful for you, and as is our audience, to
Thank
share your
you.
story. A lot of great insights, kind of little bit different, being that stepmom role of
Hmm.
now a special needs stepmom, I guess, if you will. So, thanks for coming here. I know that
Okay.
listeners, you guys enjoyed listening to Natalie in this story. You probably know other parents out there or adults that grew up with a disability that might want to share their story of how their parents shaped their lives. I'm still looking for guests, so hit me up on the Facebook page. And if you liked this episode, we could use your help, not being a best kept secret. The whole goal of this podcast is that people get a little bit of inspiration when they hear one of our guests and they feel a little bit connected, like this is one more layer of their community. So, because this is a place where I think when people are listening to these episodes, you're nodding your head up and down, you can really relate to our guests and the people that are part of the community. So, we would love your help getting the word out. Like the post from this episode, leave a comment, share it to your network, and follow the podcast Facebook page. Also, rate and review the podcast wherever you were getting this episode. We know you have a lot of choices, so we appreciate you listening. Natalie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it and love to come back sometime.
And thank you guys for listening. Again, hit me up with ideas for future guests, and we'll see everybody next time.